Upon waking each morning, I would tell myself, tonight I will not party with the guests, but I'll go to bed early. This good intention was out the window as soon as supper was over. There was too much fun going on. One night I remember most vividly when none of us got to bed at all. At least none of the guests, that is. A French ski instructor had come over from Aspen. After a day of skiing, we were all gathered at the long dining room table finishing our dessert when he asked if any of us had ever played the Cardinal Bluff game. "We'll have a Cardinal Bluff cheese fondue party and rectify your ignorance," he decided. Off to Dillon I drove to get the necessary ingredients: lots of cheese, French bread, vodka, and bottles of white wine. Often one or two miners from Montezuma would stop by and entertain the guests with talk of mining in the high country. This evening was no exception. Of the two men who walked in the door, I knew only one. The other man I'd never seen before. The miner said, "This fellow's from Hollywood, and I thought you folks might like to meet him. He's Lou Ayres, and he's interested in some mines around here." I was thrilled. A real movie star. I had seen him in All Quiet on the Western Front. Before I could tell everyone about the movie star, one of the guests came up to him, a vivacious and stunning blonde skier. "Are you a skier, Mr. Ayres?" she asked. When he shook his head negatively, she whirled around, losing all interest. I invited them to stay and join in whatever was cooking. The French chef slash ski instructor had set everything up on the table in the dining room. To play Cardinal Bluff, spear a piece of bread, dunk it in the cheese, and pop it in your mouth, and then you pick up your glass of vodka. Thank God the glasses are small, I thought. And then put your finger to the side of your nose and bounce on the opposite side of your hip on the bench. Of course, as soon as we did it wrong, we had to start all over again. I felt I'd better escape into the living room, or I wouldn't be able to cook breakfast in the morning, let alone be on the mountain to teach all day. Someone had pushed all the furniture in the living room to the sides and had turned on the record player with some nice dance music. Wandering between the two rooms, I asked myself, aren't they ever going to bed? 3 o'clock came. The moon was bright and full. "It's such a brilliant, beautiful night," someone exclaimed. "Let's all go skiing on the Little Professor." It being late spring, the Little Professor, across from Arapahoe Basin, had been skied quite a bit. Even though it was an avalanche slope, in the early morning after the cold night freeze had settled it, it was considered quite safe. Everyone, or so I thought, took off to drive up Loveland Pass to ski. Max and I gratefully went off to bed to get what sleep was left to us. Daybreak came, and here came the happy skiers, none the worse for wear. I marveled how they could still be so energetic after such a night. "You should have come along, Edna," the vivacious blonde said to me. "I guess I'm getting old," I answered. Off in the living room, I heard someone yell in response, "When are you going to quit guessing?" As I went back to flipping the pancakes, I thought, I deserve that. Upon entering the living room earlier, I saw the miner and Lou Ayres sound asleep on the couches. After waking them, the miner said to me, "It's not the skiing I couldn't take. It's all this partying that evidently goes with it." "Amen," I said to myself, and added, "Tonight I am going to bed early." Our register book, which lay on the front desk, seldom had any address in it, It just had comments. Among the usual "good chow" and "I'll be back," there were others, like "better get the roof fixed, Max," or "converted Eastern skiers." One read, "Hills aren't steep enough." I often wondered if Bob Mann, who wrote that last comment, had ever learned to turn his skis. I remember him going straight down the Molly yelling "track" all the way. It's fun to look through this book at the cross section of famous guests staying with us different years. Some were not famous until later, such as Bob Abruzzo and Maxie Anderson, who became the first to cross the Atlantic by balloon. Ernie Blake of Taos ski area, Klaus Obermeier, the French Olympic champion Charles Boson, the entire Dartmouth ski team with Coach Walter Prager in 1956, and then there was the DU team. But none were as famous or as well liked as Henry Fonda. And he came in the summer when there were no guests at all. Sometimes guests had problems besides their ski technique. One evening, as we were sitting in a small group around the fireplace, a female guest, age about 40, spoke up. She asked of the handsome Austrian ski instructor as he leaned against the stone wall of the fireplace, "You're a man. What do you find attractive about a woman? In other words, what advice would you give me to attract a gentleman of, say, 40 or 45? He looked stunned for a moment, and then he said, "Buy a sweater 2 sizes too small." A few weeks later, as we were sitting and talking by the fireplace, the same guest stood up, stretching her arms upward and turning around. "Do you think this sweater'll help me?" It evidently did. The next year we received the wedding invitation. A family with 4 children arrived one day. The wife announced to me, "This is to be my vacation. I intend to spend it sitting in front of your big fireplace and doing nothing. I don't ski, you see, so my husband is going to take the children up to the slopes all day. It'll be wonderful." Little did she dream what was ahead for her. The first day went well. Daddy took the 3 boys and the 4-year-old daughter up the mountain, entering them in ski class. But the next morning, the 4-year-old was running a temperature. Our closest doctor was 35 miles away in Idaho Springs. Of course, the husband and the 3 boys had to ski. So over Loveland Pass, Mama drove with the little girl back to Ski Tip with medications and a steamer. The next morning, one of the younger boys was running a temperature. Over the mountain went Mama. Our cook said she'd keep an eye on the little girl who was propped up on a couch in a sunny corner in the living room. The next morning, the second boy. And the morning after that, the third boy came down sick. The mother looked sicker than any of them. Finally, the vacation came to an end, with Mama dragging herself out to the car while Daddy was saying, "Boy, this was a great vacation. I never had a better time." By the fall of 1963, we had a bar in the Rathskeller that Max had built. My handsome nephew Peter agreed to be bartender for a season. He had come out as a 15-year-old to work on a local ranch 20 years earlier, and still felt that he was a true Westerner. When lonely females would climb up on a bar stool to ask Pete if he were married, he would answer, "Nope, I'm a maverick running through the prickly cactus." A natural storyteller, he always had a good audience around the bar, and business flourished. Showing Peter a letter from Texas one day, I was surprised at how excited he became. A whole group? That's great. I'll have to stock up on lots of Jack Daniels. Texans really go for bourbon. I'll be ready for them. Why, that large group will fill up the whole lodge almost. Boy, the bar business will be really great. So down to Denver went Peter, stocking up on cases of bourbon. The next day, the day of the Texans' arrival finally came. Coming home from skiing, I found Peter had opened the bar early. He had his cowboy hat, jeans, and boots on. I'm ready for him, he grinned. An entire busload arrived. As they congregated in the living room in Rathskeller, where Peter had herded most of them, he greeted them with, "Howdy, folks." Then I heard a woman say, "Right friendly they are." "Step right up, folks," Peter encouraged them. "I know you all must be thirsty after that long drive. Just step right up here to the bar." "Thanks," said one of them, who was the spokesman for the group. "Thanks, but we all's dry." "I know," said Pete. "That's why I opened the bar early." "But we all's really dry," the man answered. "We all's don't drink." "You're putting me on." Pete was dumbfounded. "What do you mean you don't drink?" Right you are. We all's from the Church of Christ. We all's don't drink." I could see Peter sinking slowly behind the bar. After showing them to their rooms, they came back to the skis to sit around the fireplace, singing hymns. At dinner that night, they all stood up and in chorus said, "Let's all hear it for the Dercums. Hip, hip, hooray!" Right nice and friendly folk. We had room for only one other guest that night, a writer for a ski publication. He took me aside later in the evening. "I was sent here to do a write-up on your lodge and all the after-ski fun you have. I don't think I can do a story on this group." "Come back when all the ski instructors are here for the exam in the spring," I told them, "and you'll get all the partying you'll want."